Hello everybody, Chris here, and in this video I wanted to talk to you guys about a few of the ways of doing retopology inside of Blender, which is a topic I've been heavily looking into in the last few days. So there's a few plugins that you can use to basically get assistance with doing your retopology and make it speed up a little bit. There's also the basic manual way of doing things, which is just to have a couple of modifiers and then to do everything with essentially basic polygon modeling. So let's talk about BSurfaces, because BSurfaces is, from what I'm gathering, pretty well respected in terms of retopology tools. And it's actually a tool that gets integrated straight into this other one called SpeedRetopo, which just kind of integrates a few different plugins and gives you a speed dial menu. But what BSurfaces does is you can draw with the grease pen. And you can do that by holding D down on your keypad, I mean your keyboard. And I believe the hotkeys just default to Blender. And then when you're done drawing a couple lines, you can hit escape, get out of that. And using this add surface button over in the tools menu, you can take these two lines and basically make them real vertices, real edges, connect them together for real faces, and give you the start of what you might want for retopology on your character. So that's a cool tool. Obviously this would probably be a bit better with the Shrinkwrap modifier, which we'll be talking about in a second, so that these top points end up kind of folding down on top of the arm, and these other ones at the bottom get closer to the actual mesh. But what's cool about this is that you can basically draw your flow lines and turn it into polygons that'll be actually part of your retopology very, very quickly. So it's a good starting point. But if you want to go a step beyond that, there's a tool called SpeedRetopology or SpeedRetopo. And what SpeedRetopo will allow you to do is to quickly set up a object for retopology in Blender. So basically by hitting this one button, it's going to take the currently selected object, presumably your base mesh, and create a retopology mesh, adding in a Shrinkwrap modifier, a Shrinkwrap grid, and a mirror. Now honestly, I'm not exactly sure what the Shrinkwrap grid is for, but the Shrinkwrap modifier, that allows basically whenever you add vertices, it'll try to find the closest point on the target object, which in this case is my character, and it will pull those vertices closer together so that as you're doing your retopology, it's as close as possible to the original mesh as possible, which is exactly what you want. And then the mirror modifier makes it so you only have to do things once. Everything gets mirrored across the x-axis. Clipping enabled by default, so if you have vertices down the center, it's going to basically merge those together rather than having one on each side and getting overlap. So beyond that though, it gives you a speed dial menu, so you can set this to a hotkey inside of the user preferences, which is also where you would go to install these plugins. This one not available inside of add-ons directly, but you can easily find it online. And then like I have my call TimeMenu button set to one of the buttons on my mouse. So you can just click whatever hotkey you have and you get this TimeMenu, which allows you to do things like the BSurface modifier, exactly like the base BSurface plugin. If you have different edge loops connected, you can do things like grid fill or bridge, save a bit of time rather than extruding each vertice individually. You can mess around with mirroring or auto merging, and auto merging is pretty useful. So as you're moving around vertices, it'll try to basically combine the location and the vertex with another one that is in the same mesh. So you don't necessarily need to manually connect them, because you can just merge them together, and you can have it be basically merging at a very large value or barely merging at all. Or if you actually go over to the tool section, you can kind of scale the threshold up and down as you need it. Beyond that, there's a couple tools I haven't really played around with so much, like G-stretch. I think the idea here is that you can take a face and kind of pull it out sort of in the, what do they call it, the snake tool from sculpting, that kind of way. But yeah, I think the main feature here is the TimeMenu. I imagine this is pretty useful if you're using a graphics tablet pen. But yeah, that's about it. BSurface is kind of the main thing there, being able to kind of quickly draw your retopology and then get some kind of form out of that. Obviously, you want to be a little bit more accurate with your drawing so you don't get like a shitty looking mesh like that. But you get the idea there. And also having the modifiers set up out of the box, that's pretty useful. So another tool that's out there by CG Cookie is called RetopoFlow. And RetopoFlow basically provides some tools for kind of automatically doing parts of your mesh. Now it's not actually automatic, it's more like it simplifies it, and it kind of uses the computer to do some of the guesswork for you, so you don't have to basically bring out or extrude every single face or every single vertex. And it adds this menu over here called Retopology. So obviously CG Cookie, I think that's the channel that released the plugin. They also have a few tutorials on it, and if you're actually interested, you should go check that out. But basically, you pick a source object, and then I think as soon as you hit contours, polystrips, or polypen, the main tools here, it's going to create a retopology mesh. And you can obviously combine those together later on if you have multiple objects created here. So using contours, there's this help menu up here. It shows basically the hotkeys. I think contours is kind of the more useful of these tools I found. And the idea here is that you can draw cylindrical forms basically by drawing lines. So I draw a line there, it shrink wraps to the original mesh and has a perfect line going all the way around. So this is really good for arms and that kind of thing. And then you draw another line and it connects them. You can draw another line, another line, another line, another line, another line, and so on and so forth. And then when you're done, you can hit enter. Obviously, there's not supposed to be mirroring going on there, but you get the idea. Pretty good for arms and legs because those are very cylindrical. But when it comes to the face, you need to use polystrips. And polystrips, well, I'll just kind of show. Same deal, you can look at all the help menu things there. But you kind of draw the flow lines you want, and it'll create faces for that. You can keep going all the way around. You can connect it back in with itself. Now, sometimes it's not going to be quite perfect. M is a merge button, so if you need to connect two of those faces together, you can do that. And what's good about this is that it's all kind of not theoretical, but it's not set in stone until you hit enter. So, and Shift X to mirror it. That's pretty important, of course. So you can kind of play around with this. I think it's K to do a cut. And then you can start drawing a new flow line. And when you get ones that are kind of forming a square shape, something like that, you can select two of the sides and hit F, or Shift F, to create what's called a patch. Okay, so Control C here. Give me a second. Okay, that looks not so great. So anyway, if you get a section of your face retopology, what you're doing manually, and you can see everything in between is pretty straightforward and doesn't have a lot of fancy geometry or anything like that, you can just select two sides and hit Shift F to create what's called a patch, which is basically just using math to figure out, okay, so this is kind of where your flow lines are at, and then everything in between should conform to that. So just kind of following and continuing what you've already set up, it goes ahead and creates some inside faces. So that kind of speeds things up, especially if you were gonna, I don't know, do something like the top of the head, where it's just really kind of consistent and doesn't need to change much. then you could select these two sides, hit Shift F, and you've just basically retopologized that entire section. So it can be pretty useful in a way. My main problem with RetopoFlow is currently it seems to crash a lot. And then this polypin tool, I guess we can touch on that a little bit too. For what you've already created in terms of your topology and you want to move stuff around, in theory it's supposed to make it a little bit smoother for doing things. So right click to move vertices without actually having to select the vertice, for instance. And you have some other stuff here, dissolving edges, deleting sections. Haven't actually seen too much use out of that, but in theory it's supposed to be a little bit faster. So anyway, that's that. And then you can of course do retopology the manual way. So let's kind of get out of that, which is just to create a separate object and add modifiers to it. So I guess generally speaking that would be Shrinkwrap, and you need a target for the Shrinkwrap. The character, of course, keep above surface, offset, and a mirror modifier. And then you can just kind of model the relatively old-fashioned way, with just the advantage that because of the shrink wrap, it's going to kind of conform to the shape you had before. So going into edit mode, and I can do a controlled click in order to create a vertex, and you know, kind of keep extruding out till we get the shape we want. And doing a bunch of extruding, trying to keep things lined up nicely, and then just doing that for basically the whole body until we get it right. So yeah, that's three tools, and then the base way of doing retopology inside of Blender, just at a very basic level. So yeah, once again, BSurfaces. There seems to be quite a bit of respect for this tool. I mean, enough so that people have built other plugins on top of it, like SpeedRetopo. SpeedRetopo kind of just takes this, gives you the extra tool of the menu, and allows you to get set up with that retopology mesh really quickly with the click of a button. Also, this is combining a couple other things like loop tools. That's, I presume, where the bridge and the grid fill come from. And I think if we go check the menu here for SpeedRetopo, the merging, I think that's coming out of Auto Mirror, but I could be wrong about that. So you actually have to enable each of these three plugins in order for SpeedRetopo to work. But yeah, once again, you can Google that. It's not too hard to find. So yeah, I hope this video has helped you guys out at least a little bit in understanding the different options for doing retopology inside of Blender. Thanks for watching, and hopefully I'll see you guys in my future Blender content.